According to my computer, we are currently live. So we'll just zip through and introduce everybody. And I guess I'll start since I'm responsible for this. So I'm PZ Myers. I'm a biologist at the University of Minnesota Morris. And Morris, like many other universities, has announced in the past week that we are going online. And they sent messages to all the students telling them to stay home from spring break and don't come back until they say it's okay. So we're frantically rushing to get all this technology in place so that we can keep the classes going. So that's why I'm here. I'm figuring this stuff out. Okay, next I got Dan Goldner.
Hi, I'm Dan Goldner. I teach 11th and 12th grade English in Massachusetts. My district is out through next Friday. We expect significantly longer. My challenge, and this was why I sort of asked earlier, is I'm not really supposed to advance my curriculum because our special education students don't have access to the special education resources that they would need for equity reasons. So I'm supposed to create and be available for my students for more like social emotional connections to the community, sure that we can maintain at least a little bit of normalcy. I use Google Classroom with my students, so I'm hoping to be able to get some discussions maybe going through that, and I'm here to sort of see what everyone else is doing.
Oh, okay, so they're asking you to spin your wheels for a while.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, next, H.J. Hornbeck.
Indeed, indeed. I am a grad student down at the University of Calgary, and on Friday was the first day they actually suspended classes over here, saying basically, well, you know, we're just doing this temporarily, who knows what's going to happen. Finally got an email just about an hour ago saying, yep, we're just moving to online where possible, don't come to courses. So I've kind of been tossed into the deep end. Fortunately, I am a computer scientist, so the deep end is kind of where I'm used to being, and, you know, online computer stuff, I got that, you know, I'll be fine.
Okay. Let's see, next up we got John.
Hi, I'm in sunny San Diego. Hi, I'm recently retired. I have a PhD from MIT, unfortunately in computer science, so I don't know anything about biology or virology or epidemiology or anything. I, however, have been reading online. Well, I have a personal interest in coronavirus all of a sudden, and I've been reading online about a lot of people and how their problems they're having in academia, especially, and the ways they're dealing with these and things they're learning and so on. And I have made a promise not to spout out about stuff I don't understand, which is pretty much anything with the word biology in it. So I'm going to be quiet for as much of this as I can until I start saying, isn't this all fake news or something? But I won't do that. Sorry. Okay. I'm done.
Yes, don't we all wish we had degrees in epidemiology right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy, and it looks like we're not doing anything on YouTube Live yet.
Uh-oh, for some
My husband's
reason,
trying to watch it downstairs, and it says it'll start briefly or in a few
for
minutes.
some reason, it started a fresh stream on YouTube.
Oh, no.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it's recording, but it's recording a different link, which is really annoying. I don't know what I did wrong. So
Okay, just keep going.
Just keep going. Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Christy. I'm a technical writer. I'm a contractor at Trillion Services, contracted to Cisco Systems. And last Tuesday, Cisco made the decision to have us all work from home until further notice, which is fine because Cisco has WebEx.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about social isolation and what we can do and what I'm doing.
Uh-huh. Okay. David.
Well, I'm David Richardson, coming in from Kalmar in southeast Sweden. I work at Linnaeus University, which is a minor provincial university down here. And my day job is mostly teaching English, but I've been working online since about 1982, and I've taught lots and lots of students in using lots and lots of different technologies in lots and lots of places, because there are loads of Swedish citizens who want to study from where they are. So we're very, very used to sort of handling it. In the spring, we always have groups of enterprising Swedes who've moved to Thailand, and they've realized that they can actually live quite comfortably on the money that they get from the state to study, if they study an online course. So they shoot off to the beach in Thailand and spend the day sunning themselves and the evening connecting up with me, usually this way as well. And as you can see, I'm coming in from home, so I'm sorry, Paul, but you may get a visit from a cat in a minute.
What?
Yeah, yeah. My cat loves it when I walk.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an evil cat lurking over here, so yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm doing next week is that my university hasn't actually shut down yet. They're still waiting for official word from the relevant agencies in the Swedish government. So, but anyway, we've already got some students whose kids have go to day nurseries that have been closed down. So we said, okay, sorry, let's just play safe and do it all online. One of the advantages that we've got is that instead of the university providing us with a room, the Swedish University Network, which runs the internet in Sweden, has got a kind of a major contract with Zoom. So they actually supply every teacher in Sweden at every university with a Zoom room, and they keep it going. So they've been stress testing the system for the last couple of weeks to make sure that it's going to cope with additional strain on it. And basically, if there is additional strain, they'll just buy a load more server space and a load more licenses, and
Okay.
So that's
all right. Let's go on to Kira next.
Hi, I'm Kira, and I am from the U.S. epicenter just north of Seattle. I teach biology at a community college just north of the city, and we've been fully online since March 9th. So we've been in the thick of this, so to speak. We were somewhat prepared in my area because we had a 2-week, we call it the snowpocalypse, last year right about this time, which was unexpected, and we all suddenly had to move everything online for 2 weeks with a pretty unclear end date. We thought that was just going to be a day or two, and it became 2 weeks. So my class format works pretty well with online. Like we were talking about earlier, I tend to teach in 10 or 15-minute blocks and then give the students something to do. I'm teaching using the Canvas conferences tool, which relies on Big Blue Button. And I rely a lot also on Google Forms to replace what I would be in-class worksheets for students. And I can see their responses in real time and then come back, and based on their responses to the questions that I give them, we can work through it. So it's been working. The big struggle is going to be, what do we do with labs? So I'm working on that, but that's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I come from the Seattle area myself, and I'll just tell you, your snowpocalypses are nothing. It's what we get every year here in Minnesota.
I lived in International Falls for about 10 years.
Oh.
So yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. Okay, D. Turner.
Hi, thanks for organizing this. It's nice to know someone else has a complete lack of knowledge and understanding of biology.
Mine's better than yours.
It's not a competition. But I am in Oakland, California, and I am an interaction product designer, and I also teach interaction design, and I'm hoping to be teaching at UC Berkeley in an adjunct position this fall, summer or fall. So I'm very interested in learning what people are doing about teaching remotely and any sort of pedagogical changes or structural changes they're doing, what tools they're using to support. I'm also very concerned about the gap of students, like especially elementary students who don't have access at home or quality stuff. Our local library is just shut down for indefinitely. Oh, there's the cat. Great. And I'm also, in my own field, we're used to doing a lot of collaborative work, and I'm very interested in seeing what people are doing in terms of that remotely, because more and more of our jobs are going remotely, and I'm trying to build up my skills as I'm looking for new work. So having a good set of skills for remote work and how people face these challenges would be, self-interest.
Okay, so now we know all the players. As I said in my email to you guys, I'd like to keep this positive. So I'd love to hear the good news that people have, the good suggestions and great ideas that we can all implement. Because it sounds like all of us we're either technical, working from home sorts of people, or we're educators or whatever. And so this is all information will be applicable to me. Who wants to say something positive? Oh man, my thumb disappears.
Well, the odds of death are low. That's one nice positive thing. But no, actually in computer science, we actually do have a problem with the labs. You normally think of it in terms of biology, that you've got to set up experiments, things along those lines too. Well, within computer science, we often have programs we expect students to use, to have programming environments that they're supposed to, be using as well. Those are all on university computers. What happens when students can't get access to the university? Well, it turns out there's actually a lot of really good virtual machines online. There's a program out there called VirtualBox, which allows you to set up a virtual computer. There's a number of virtual machines which are available for free online. Certainly the Linux distributions are all free, but if you know where to look, you can actually find Windows distributions too, which at least are time limited. From that, you can actually set up a shared environment which students can use. And from that, you basically share it out and say, okay, this is the environment I expect you to use. Here are the tools that you're expected to have access to. Go at it. And then you have to sort of work out some sort of way to submit it back. So definitely I'm planning on also talking about shared folders and how to get things both in and outside of the virtual machine.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been extremely impressed by, and this will sound funny until I explain why it's not all that funny, is that schools have been able to shut down so fast. Because you would think that would be, we will have to have a steering committee to look into that or something. And instead it's just, administrators just send out emails to the professors saying, please switch your classes to online by Friday, which is not great for the faculty, but it's, or next Friday. And it requires iteration, a lot of iteration, I'm sure. And we won't know how well this works until later, but just the fact that it's shut down now is something that you can imagine that we'll look back on thinking, my gosh, that's the best thing we did. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it, keeping the teaching going, keeping the other work going, keeping research going is gee, that's good too.
Yeah. Well, as Kara mentioned, though, our administrators are used to just being able to say, nope, no class this week, if it's snow or whatever.
Yeah.
The difference here is they're telling us there's no class starting next week, but you're still expected to teach.
Right.
Which is the difficult part of the challenge.
Right. I just watched Stephen Colbert from Friday night. He was giving his show in front of an audience consisting of only his staff, and it was so dead. Every joke went flat. It was, nobody laughed. His timing was all off. He eventually, was about to, walk off stage and say, see you next week or whatever. And it's professors can't do that. So, yeah, but it's hard, and you don't find out what it's going to be like until, like Stephen Kleber, you do it the first time as a rehearsal to see just how bad it can be.
So you're telling me my comedic timing in lecture is going to be just totally screwed up.
You'll need a laugh track.
Yeah. Okay.
Paul, you can actually teach with a cat like I'm doing.
And you can just explain things to the cat as you go along.
Exactly.
Oh.
We English teachers, we need to have a dialogue going. So I've got someone to talk to. She didn't want to stay around. Yeah.
And she seems like a tough audience.
Yeah, absolutely. No, she's nice. She's nice. Other than you might see a tail kind of wander.
Yeah.
I mean,
my cat is not cooperative, but maybe we could get a hand puppet or something and do that.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that I've learned over the years is to think in terms of functions rather than, if you like, practices. So you think, okay, we've got a function which is, for example, having a dialogue with each other. All right, how does that fit into the actual course that you're developing? We've got another function which is perhaps absorbing technical information. In my case, it's things like grammar and things like that. Okay, what's the best way of doing that? And then finding a way of integrating all these different functions using the technology we've got. And so one of the things I learned, very, very early on, was the idea of trying to find a kind of common denominator. And one of the very early books I read, about 1996, was called In Search of the Virtual Class, where it was written by a New Zealander. And it basically came up with the idea that the thing that we've got, the thing that all our, if you like, input has got in common is the use of bandwidth somehow or another. And when we meet face to face, we've got huge amount of bandwidth. And then when we, the bandwidth shrinks according to which technology we're using, until you get something like say a printed page in a book, which is probably about as bandwidth poor as you could get. And then the question for us is to think, okay, what combination of bandwidth does this course need? And what combination of bandwidth does this particular input, this particular lesson need? That, that's the kind of thing that we think about here.
Okay. So, Christy, you had some specific things you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I did. And my husband says to please, please press the many cam button to start, I guess, everybody to, right now they can only hear you, PZ.
Well, that's all they need to hear. No. A many.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
What the heck is a many cam button?
Many cam. Yeah, I just forwarded you the screen capture. Many, and I don't know if that's
Okay.
a Zoom thing or a.
Oh, I've got this thing called many cam. Let me see if I can.
Oh, just click it.
I'm clicking it right now.
Thank you.
Okay, what is it doing?
Did it do anything? I hope it did.
Oh, it says camera not, that's no good.
This is like a large part of my work, doing usability testing.
Usability testing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And when things repeat, it's not fault.
No, it's not.
I find many Google products are designed for people who've built Google products and know how to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. So yeah, I've got this thing called Minicam, which is intercepting everything, and it's telling me the subscription is expired and I got to give them money. Okay, so let me see if I'm just going to uninstall it and see if that fixes anything.
What? Oh no.
It should be coming.
That should be covered.
Yeah. all of a sudden I'm getting all kinds of error messages flying at me.
Oh, no.
Great.
Oh, shoot.
That's
Buttons.
Yeah, we've broken the internet.
We
no, you've only broken my laptop, that's all.
Could try sharing the desktop and we could see what's going on.
Well, I just destroyed it.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Oh no.
Okay.
A destroyed desktop. Nothing's worse than that.
Yeah, and pro tip, be careful sharing your desktop when you're teaching
Yeah.
a large group of students, because God only knows what is going to be up on there that you don't want them to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, normally you'd want to share just one window.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, it's one of the things I like about the tools that I use. I can share, for instance, just my PowerPoint window, which works great.
That's nice.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and I've got a multi-monitor setup. So a lot of the things that I don't want students to see, I just throw onto one monitor and then make sure that I never share that monitor.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm set up with 2 monitors here, which is why I keep looking over that way, because that's where the second monitor is. But
Okay. Well, if I share something, can you tell me if you could see it?
yes, let's try it. We'll see what
We'll
happens.
try it. Share. Okay, I'm trying to share.
It says,
Oh, great.
Oh, nice.
hey.
Nice.
Oh, nice. I
It's
caught.
working.
Yay! I don't know if anybody else can see it, but you 9 can see it, right?
Yes.
Now we could see it.
I'm viewing Tristy's screen right now.
Yay! Oh no.
Okay.
I suppose that's another lesson. Always have somebody double checking that people can actually see what you're outputting.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you asked what we were doing in the midst of COVID-19. So I kind of am looking at it like, what can I do and what do I have control over? Because I find myself getting inundated with all this information, some of which is just wrong and some of it's just bad and some of it's helpful and some of it just doesn't apply to me. And how do you deal with all that crap flying at you and figure out what to do? So a long time ago on the radio, I heard this radio announcer talk about priorities in her life, and so I adopted them. And I don't know who gets credit for this. It's been around a long time, but I just believe that if I have my priorities right, then the other stuff I'll figure out what applies to me and those that I help. So I take care of myself, and then if I don't take care of myself, I can't help anybody. I'm no good to even anybody. I help my life partner. I help my dependents, which in this case is my dog, because I don't have kids. And when I have the bandwidth, I help others. And so right now with the COVID situation, I'm reaching out to others by phone and chat and video and at work. Because I actually took the job at Cisco because I wanted to work on site, and contractors by contract are 100% on site. And I do my best writing and work when I'm in that environment with a whole bunch of people working on a similar project. So I find this really weird working from home all of a sudden and being very disconnected from a job that I just started. Even my onboarding part of it has been through WebEx live sessions with another coworker. So it's very strange. And then my other point there is to volunteer to help others. And I've noticed on nextdoor.com that a lot of my neighbors are starting to like request people who need errands run, and they're keeping lists, and then they're letting other people who volunteer know about these neighbors that need help, because I don't know all my neighbors, but I do know the ones directly around me, and those are the ones that I can help the easiest. So when somebody comes across someone near me, I can find out about it and either go to the store and leave the stuff on the porch, and then watch and make sure they get the stuff on their porch, because we have a lot of porch thieves in downtown San Jose. So it's that's pretty common here. How about you guys? Are any other suggestions for how to help others when we're supposed to stay in our houses?
Yeah. Well,
I'd like
unfortunately, I sent my wife away
Oh,
just before all this
okay.
happened. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah, so she's hanging out with the
with the baby,
granddaughter and
right?
yeah, and she's helping my
It's
daughter
a
out.
bit
So that's
drastic,
good.
that, I'm sorry.
And that's a great thing.
There
It's
have been
great.
some,
Yes, but it's
yeah,
very quiet around here now.
Yeah.
there have been a lot of great resources for, in addition to Nextdoor, I could put some in the chat.
Oh, that'd be great.
But also, I mean, I want to and reinforce that, especially a lot of people might feel a huge sense of helplessness and kind of,
Yeah.
generalized anxiety and doom. And
Mhm.
having had a social science background, I can tell you that there are a lot of studies about how doing something can definitely help ease the internal anxiety about this. And just this morning, I jumped into this End Coronavirus Slack run by New England Science, NESCI. I'll
Mhm.
put that in the chat. It's a lot of people doing amazingly great work, and all I could do this morning was basically edit some communications.
Mhm.
But at least doing that, I think gave me a sense that I was contributing to that. So I would recommend that Slack, or I can put some other
Oh,
resources on how to
cool.
start local groups. We have an East Bay volunteer group, which will help you. And you can just specify whether you want to do things like cook food, deliver, run errands, or even just help people sign up for health insurance, or even just be a resource on phone for people who feel isolated or upset.
Oh, I would love to do that. Could you please send me that?
I will look that up.
Yeah.
Now that I've said it, I
Yeah.
have to go find it, but I will do that.
Darn. Thank you. And then dovetailing onto yours, those with invisible impairments, they are really close to my heart right now, because there is nothing more isolating than having other comorbid disease process in addition to the anxiety that just normal life throws at you. So those with depression, which just can't be seen, and hearing impairment. I never knew how isolated my mother was until I lost 30% of my hearing, and I got it back, but she didn't. So it was a really big wake-up call to know. And then a couple years ago, I broke my leg and found out how it felt to be homebound, even though only for 8 weeks. That was hell. Oh my God. And physical limitations, caregiver fatigue, just being a mom and suddenly having all the kids home and they all have to do online classes, and they may not all have that many computers or devices to support that level of like a whole classroom at different age, different classes, all at the same time, and having to feed them and do your own work from home. And yeah, it's quite crazy. And I also feel for people who cannot get out and away from their abusers, because when things get really stressful, that's when not so great social interactions can happen, and elder and child abuse. And then here in San Jose and everywhere, the homeless situation. Homelessness is a problem, and so I try to help when I can.
Being told to stay home doesn't help very well in that case.
The Weddy?
Oh, telling people to stay home is not very good for homeless people. Can only be told to stay homeless, and that's not. That was meant to be a joke, but gosh, it wasn't funny. I'm sorry. Go on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think it's an important point, John. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've been doing some volunteer work occasionally at a winter temporary homeless shelter, and they've now sort of said no of the casual volunteers go in because of the fear of spreading, but they are short now of sanitation stuff. They have nothing to, short of Clorox wipes.
Yeah.
To wipe stuff. Living in a Unitarian Universalist church right now, and it ends in 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And of course, they don't have people cooking dinner for them or well, they have people cooking dinner and dropping it off,
Yeah,
but they have, with the libraries closed, I'm up in
right.
Palo Alto,
Yeah.
they have nowhere to shelter during the day, and it's wet out today.
Yes, it's rainy, and I have, well, here just up the street from me, just a block away, we have
Mm.
at least 4 tents and tarp houses set up on the sidewalks, completely blocking any path.
Hmm.
And there's nowhere for them to go. It's just so sad.
And it will spread through the
Yeah.
communities very, very
Oh, like
quickly.
wildfire, because they're exposed. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's really important to help out when we can. And yeah, I have the Grace Church really close by that,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I can best help them. But I think cleaning supplies would be great. Yeah.
That's one question I have though, is, you know, we're supposed to self-quarantine ourselves. And for instance,
Mhm.
here where I live, this is a really aging population. There's a lot of senior citizen homes around here. I think the best thing I could do is stay away from them,
Mhm.
because I don't want to be responsible for spreading this disease myself. So, especially to such vulnerable people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed our nursing home, which is 1 block over, the parking lot is really dead. The only time I'm leaving the house, by the way, is to walk the dog. But and we're not going to see people. The only thing I would even consider taking to the homeless shelter up the street is unopened things covered with cardboard, because it doesn't seem to last very long on cardboard. If I'm infectious, that doesn't live very long. I don't know how to say that best. But anyway, dropping off a supply and just leaving it, not staying.
Mhm.
Just letting them know it's not a bomb. But
Hmm.
but
Call
yeah,
ahead first.
clearly marked. Yeah, just let somebody know and then drop it off and leave. Yeah, definitely. I'm not advocating face-to-face contact with anybody right now.
I
That's
have a health question that the biology people might be able to answer.
good.
Maybe this isn't answerable right now, but I mean, and maybe we could get more back on track. I'd really like to move to the question of what are people doing that works, since
Mm.
you're
Hmm.
requested to keep it positive. But my question is, if testing kits become readily available, given the incubation period where people are asymptomatic, what should we do about that in order to, as PZ was saying, not pass it along to people? Should, once testing kits are available on a regular basis, should we be periodically checking in and getting tested to know that at least for that day, at that moment, we're not likely to pass along to somebody, and then maybe wait 2 weeks and get tested again? What's
Uh,
that? I can't get my head around that.
well, what I'd say is, realistically, testing kits are going to trickle out, and we're not going to be able to just at will go get tested. So it's kind of a moot question, because we're not in any shape to do that right now. Right now, I think the appropriate response is, if you feel symptoms, you call into your local clinic or hospital, and they tell you whether you should come in for a test or not. That's kind of where we're at right now. What we'll be doing next year, that'll be interesting. You know, on the other hand, we really should be getting lots of testing done so that we actually have a realistic perspective on how this disease is spreading in the population right now, because we don't know that even.
My understanding from reading the New York Times, which may not be the best source, is that this virus is, we're lucky with this virus in that the infectious period begins at roughly the same time as the symptom.
Is Cam left, but I should warn folks that there seems to be significant evidence that there's asymptomatic transmission. As many as 25% of the cases we think may have arisen from people who were asymptomatic. Young people in particular may be more prone to being asymptomatic based on the information from South Korea.
Okay,
Yeah.
then forget what I just said. Please don't believe me. But I have.
Yeah, I can hear, John, that you've got a bandwidth problem at your end.
Yeah.
Or a feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
me and my end. Okay.
Yeah, it depends what else
Okay.
is going on.
I will try to rejoin on a different device. Let me do that because this one may, who knows? But I'll be back in. Well, I'll be back in a moment. You guys talk.
Well, that's actually another good point as well. Watch your bandwidth. Quite often, especially with wireless networks and all that, they can be kind of flaky and intermittent. Most wireless routers, though, actually have a wired plug-in you can plug into. So if you've got a laptop, especially, take full advantage of that and plug right in. You can also buy a Cat5 cable up to about 100 feet or so, 30 odd meters. So you can also use that as an alternative if you're, wiring from there to your desktop.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Getting back to something that was said earlier, what the Swedish government are sort of like working full out on the response to the coronavirus. We haven't actually shut the country down yet, like Denmark has, but it's one of the options that's available. But the specific advice is don't visit hospitals. So all visiting times at hospitals have been stopped, and try not to try not to visit old people unless they really need help. And one of the questions that's come up is, should we shut schools down? We haven't done that yet. But one of the reasons not to do it, of course, is that a very likely consequence of shutting schools down is that we get all these snotty little kids who are fantastic spreaders of viruses being dumped on grandparents who are extremely vulnerable to coronavirus. So the Swedish government is busy saying, take it easy, don't rush into things. But on the other hand, there is this very strong tendency to listen to experts here. So, it makes us a bit weird, maybe in your eyes, I don't know.
Yeah, in American eyes, that's very strange. Why would you do that?
Yeah. I mean, the Prime Minister of Sweden ran a press conference this afternoon with the head of the body that deals with national emergencies, and they sent out a brochure to all Swedish households about a year ago, saying this is what you should be doing, if there's a problem. I'll see if I can. I think I've got it in the drawer. I'll see if I can fish it out for you.
Yeah, well, the United States president had a press conference too. We will not talk about it.
One of those. That says, if a crisis or war comes, what to do?
Nice. They're thinking ahead. I like that.
Yeah. This is it. This came out last year. They said, saying, what to do. One of the nice things is that if we do get in a war, it says any message which says that Sweden has given up and is going to surrender is false. So don't believe it. So,
Was there anything in there about how much toilet paper one should buy?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the most important things. There's a wonderful meme going around the internet at the moment in Sweden that says that if you feel that you need 144 toilet rolls to take you through a 14-day period of quarantine, you should be seeing a doctor now. Don't wait for the COVID.
Yes.
And there was another one saying that if you're hoarding toilet rolls and pasta and canned food, for God's sake, hoard condoms as well, because we could really do with cutting out the supply of idiots,
Oh dear.
But that's that.
Okay, that's harsh. That's really harsh.
Piggybacking on that idea of kids not being in school, I have 2 kids. They're in 2nd grade and 3rd grade. They're going to be home with me. I'm also supposed to be doing something, whatever it is, with my students. One of my challenges, what I'm trying to figure out is, like, what do I do with my kids? What do I do with my students? How can I balance these 2 expectations? And I have no idea. And how do I, if my 2 kids in 2nd and 3rd grade, I want to try to provide them also with maintaining some type of learning. So I want to, and I have no idea how to teach elementary school. I'm 11th and 12th grade. What do I do with my kids? What do I do with my students? How do I balance these things while also taking care of me, to Christy's point as well too. And I'm almost at a loss of how to balance all of these things.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that working online does is it makes the students and you realize that you're actually just a person, and that I find it quite liberating in a way. One of the discussions that I often get into with people who are purely campus teachers is that the campus teachers will say things like, "I'd miss the intimate relationship I have with my students," and I usually counter that by saying, "Okay, these students you have these intimate relations with, how often have you seen the inside of their bedrooms?" And they go, "What?" I said, "Yeah, well, a lot of people that I teach are, in Swedish we call them women with the 3 V's. That is a villa, that's like a house, and a Volvo, which is a Volvo, and a vuva, which means a dog. And they usually live in a place called something like Värnamo, which also starts with V. And usually, when they study, they need to study. The only quiet place in the house is their bedroom. And you often see people with a camera on, and they suddenly think, "Oh God, my bra's showing! Oh, turn it off! Go and hide it," something like that. Because that happens. Now, what I would think is that probably, if your students see your kids come in, they'll realise that Dan's a guy. He's got family and everything, and maybe to give the students who are online something to do and say to them, "Hey guys, I just got to fix something for my kid. So go and do this exercise for 10 minutes, and then when we come back, we'll all see how you got on with it." So it means that, like, having a little bank of exercise. I know it sounds really easy for me to say that, because it's not going to be it's not a magic thing, but I'm sure that if we if we worked on it together, we could all give you very, very practical things that you could do, could have up your sleeve. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
No.
That's okay.
You've got a lot more expertise than most of us. One thing, in fact, actually, I was actually taking almost the opposite approach to that. I was actually going to try and emphasize continuity as a main theme as well. Students are used to seeing me in front of a whiteboard like this. So I was even thinking of going to the step of buying a whiteboard that I could take home with me, such that, I can actually go out and sketch exactly as it is. We always met class at a specific time. I am going to run these online meetings at that time. I'm going to show up, precisely then. I am going to structure it the exact same format. We always had a few questions that we did before, and then we would open it up to the students overall. I'm going to do exactly that. I even had a Google form I was offering students where they could fill it out. That way they could privately ask for specific questions to be answered without embarrassing themselves by raising their hand. I'm just going to do that more. Basically, I'm trying to keep things as minimally disruptive as possible.
I can think of a problem with that, though, and that is that our students' lives have been thoroughly disrupted right now. So it might be very nice for me to say, "Oh yeah, we'll just keep on meeting at 9:50 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday." But they may be in situations where that's no longer possible. They're home with family, they're with you know, they've suddenly got new obligations. So I've had students who tell me that one of the things they're going to be doing when they go home is helping to take care of their brothers and sisters or their grandparents. And that means for me to say, nope, don't do that. You will pay attention to me on my time. I don't think that would work very well. So
But you could record it,
yes,
and they could watch it asynchronously.
exactly. That's kind of the plan is I will be doing these recordings and making them available, and I will not impose a requirement on them that they watch it at a certain time.
Yeah.
Right, that I guess that, well, yeah, that speaks to you, but it's sometimes in conflict with the idea of breaking out the lecture part of the class and then having separate collaborative times, like having multiple sections for each class where students can ask questions and give feedback. And speaking of the whiteboard's a great idea. We use Mural a lot as a collaborative whiteboard. You can integrate that inside of Zoom so people can start working through things together or in breakout rooms. If that's an alternative to physically putting a whiteboard in your house, or having having all the students put whiteboards in their houses.
So what is this magic thing you just named, Mural?
I will put a link in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've
Actually,
thought
you
of
might
that
be
as
able
well.
to share it.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
it's also listed in that the first thing I put in the chat about how to run ideation workshops remotely.
Okay.
But I will.
My only concern with an online whiteboard is simply that if you try and draw with a mouse, it usually looks nothing like, you know, normal sort of handwriting and all that. So I'm planning on either using a tablet or a touchscreen to do that part. That was the only thing stopping me from using a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard.
You kind of have to get over that. It just accept it all looks terrible. If you're doing things like diagrams, they have primitives, so you don't have to draw a box. You can select a box. So at least the boxes and arrows can be, and you can type in text rather than having to handwrite.
Yeah.
True.
One piece of advice that I give is, you know, from our experience here, is that if you're going to use like a real whiteboard, go and get some of those whiteboard pens that have got extremely wide tips to them, because a regular one, we won't be able to see it. You need that kind of pen that like supermarkets use when they make their sign. I'm just trying to think of it in terms of inches so that you guys understand, but about, say,
About a half-inch wide.
Yeah, it's like 2 inches wide, something like that. But the other thing that I mean, we've used tablets or, you know, write on tablets very successfully for teaching languages like Chinese and Japanese, you know, remotely. Those work really, really, really well. You've just got to make sure that you select a wide enough pen, because again, you tend to sort of select a very narrow one, something like that.
So I guess, yeah, okay.
Something like that, yeah.
I have a question just about ordinary teaching. Suppose I'm a professor. I'm giving a class. I'm giving it, you know, I'm giving it online. Some students are going to be there. Some students aren't going to be there. I would like to be able for students to be able to ask questions even if they aren't there. So maybe they can leave questions for me asynchronously. I'm just making this up, right? But they can leave questions for me asynchronously. I can answer them asynchronously, and I can publish them to the rest of the class with the students' permissions, maybe. That would be neat. Yes, no?
Yeah.
So I've used online discussion boards and Canvas for this pretty routinely. It's not as popular with the students as you might hope, but it is a way of trying to communicate some of those asynchronous questions out to students, because one of the things that I found takes more time when teaching online versus face-to-face is the you know, in a class, I can just stand up in front of everybody and say, hey, this is what we're doing this week. And online, I sometimes have to explain that 15 separate times to students, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean, again, I'm not sure how representative our situation is in Sweden, but we've got a very, very sophisticated Moodle course management system. And we've also got access to a streaming server that's basically got unlimited capacity. So everything that we do, we've got a link. Or one Moodle server allows recordings from, say, Zoom onto an ordinary page in a book in Moodle. So it ends up with us being able to do things like this and to have discussion forums. One of the things that I sometimes use is a kind of group wiki within Moodle. One of the experiences that we have with students is that, of course, nobody wants to expose their ignorance to both the rest of the class and especially to the teacher. So I find myself, particularly at the beginning of a course, having to create exercises or activities which allow people to, if you like, show what they don't know, and to get them to realize that that's okay. That's how you learn. But it's a very, very difficult thing to get across. And from my experience of working with American students, it's incredibly difficult. Admit that they don't know.
I'll tell them.
I've come across a couple of interesting collaborative sort of programs between Swedes and Americans, where they start off by saying, "Well, what do you know about whatever you're talking about?" And after a few weeks, the Swedes say the Americans said that they were all really, really, really good at this, but they didn't know anything. And we said we're not so sure if we are very good at this, but we know so much more than they do. And I think that's a kind of cultural thing that you guys are going to have to get over with working online. I'm sorry, I hope that didn't come across as being racist or anything, but
no, it's a familiar problem in the classrooms here. And yeah, the other side of it too is that it's much easier to get the men in the class to speak up, and it's the same situation with the women, where they may be even better at it than some of the men, but they don't say so. They're really reluctant to speak up.
Yeah, this is one reason why I'm trying to cultivate multiple ways students can get in contact. The Google Forms are anonymous. The Zoom group chat is not, but certainly it's more immediate, and some students may prefer that. There is, of course, always email. And I'm just trying to balance all three of those and find some way that everybody, even the shy students or the ones reluctant to speak up, actually have some way to speak up if they need to.
Yeah.
No.
One thing that I've always done when I've been designing a course is to draw up a course budget and say, how many hours am I going to be able to devote to, for example, responding to chat? Because I think if you don't do that, and if you try and sort of use the same kind of budget that you've used for face-to-face teaching, you're going to find that you've forgotten about just how long you're going to spend. And the more that you encourage the students to interact with you and ask you questions, the more time you're going to use up actually answering them. And I think that's a factor that administrators haven't kind of thought of.
Yeah, we're getting confronted with it now.
One of the things that I do with the Canvas conferences is when I teach fully online, I do this. I have a category of points that are just sort of a catch-all that I call participation points that encourage them to do things that will help them academically. And one of them is, for every module that we go through, is I have a discussion board for questions, and I give points for people asking questions, but I also give points for other students to come in and answer other people's questions. Because then they're not only relying on me, they get to practice what they're learning. And students are more likely to get a rapid response when students are awake, like around 11 or 12 at night, right? When I'm not online, they can still get answers to their questions.
Yeah. We sometimes use internet tutors in places like Australia and New Zealand. And that's great because they're at exactly the opposite time zone from Sweden. So sometimes students say, "My God, you know, I sent a question off at midnight and I got an answer straight away." I said, "Yeah, well, it's midday in Australia, so it kind of works." So we exploit the time zones as much as we can as well. It's not unusual for me to have a student somewhere like in Washington, and another student in somewhere like Japan, and the Japanese student can come in like later in the Japanese night, and the Washington students coming in at, say, around about breakfast time, and then the Swedish students are coming in like about just after lunch, and you know, kind of all works like together like that.
Emphasizing the importance of that asynchronous stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my plan for this remainder of the semester is things like I'm going to set weekly due dates for things and give assignments well ahead of that, just in case students only check in, you know, like Wednesday instead of Monday, then it's due on Friday, so they can all keep up with it that way. So.
Yeah, that tends to work.
And I was wondering, can I speak to Dan's question? Like, can I understand better what your problem is with trying to teach your kids and your school kids? It doesn't sound like you're limited to a particular curriculum, correct?
Well, with my students, yes and no. I mean, I have a curriculum, they have a book that they can be reading, but I'm restricted by this. I'm not really supposed to advance the curriculum. I'm more supposed to provide supplemental learning, a connection. On the other hand, with my two kids at home, I haven't heard from their teachers yet. I haven't heard from our district yet where we live, what the expectation is. And so as tomorrow will be the fourth day, we'll be home together. It's like, okay, I kind of want to get them back on a routine because I think that's just going to help them feel more comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
But also, I don't know what to do with that. Well, I know a little bit. Like I have some online tools that our district has between, you know, really basic an online math program, but maybe it's, you know, you can just like, okay, you know, 9 to 10 is reading, 10 to 10:30 is break, 10:30 to 11 is math time. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But then because it's also like, during what time blocks am I online with my students, and balancing that.
Yeah, wow. Well, I was thinking when I used to be a speech pathologist or high school charter school, and I often would take the curriculum that had already been taught, and I would usually pick their science stuff because that interested me. And then I would do science experiments with them. So from home, and I did have students in Oakland and we did teleservice, but I didn't actually have a video camera then. But you could use your phone and like video simple science experiments that they can do in the kitchen, and your second and third grade children can do the steps to the science experiment or cooking or whatever could be connected to the past curriculum that they've learned. I did weird stuff. Oops.
So it'd be like Mr. Science with his little kids who would help out.
Yeah. They're the actors, and they get to learn the science as a byproduct, and the vocabulary and the grammar, and he can have them write or draw pictures, whatever at whatever level they are. And then his students could give his own kids feedback.
Oh, that's
and
brilliant.
I mean, let kids teach kids, and you be the facilitator and model good daddiness. Because, you know, you figure in a high school student, in a high school classroom, at least 25% of those kids don't have good interactions with their parents or a parent, and just modeling good communication is very helpful for them. It really is.
And then it gets spun off onto television, and you're the next Bill
And then
Nye.
you'll have a TV show.
Right.
Oh wow, so this is just a secret way to turn us all into TV stars. Now I get it.
Oh no.
There's the kitty again.
I'd watch it.
Oh yeah, and if you have any pets, make sure they make a little have a cameo every time.
Right. If I could ask a question, I have to apologize. I was actually muted for the last 10 minutes, so I'm like, my mouth has been moving, but I haven't been saying anything. What are the things, if I'm a student at the university, there are two great things about being a student there. One is that I get to go to lectures and hear the professor teach and see the pictures and so on. The second thing is that I get to talk to other students. And presumably we would like these students in these classes to be able to interact with other students in better ways than just, you know, sending email to a class distribution list or something. Is there any good, do people have good thoughts, or is this a well-understood problem, or is this not a well-understood problem?
When I taught high school, the kids I was working with were so poor they didn't even have cell phones, so they don't have the technology to do a lot. But maybe other people have other experiences.
Yeah. Well, in my classes, you know, I emphasize group work a lot. So I'm telling the students, even as I go when they're home, that you work with this person and do this project, and I will be open to hearing from them if there are difficulties in communication. They just have to tell me, and we'll work something out. But yeah, science is a collaborative process, and to suddenly strip that all out and make people work alone is counterproductive.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about just more ad hoc interactions where, you know, you have someone you sit next to who always takes really good notes, and you get to talking about that, or there's some creepy kid in the class like me who, you know, always sits in the front row and asks lots of questions, and being able to integrate that into things. Well, gee, that would be wonderful. That sounds like a next generation problem, but it's something maybe not to forget from the meanwhile.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes the students surprise me. Like in cell biology last term, I didn't organize this at all, but a couple of students got together and were using Google Docs to publish notes for the class, and everybody would add to them. And there's nothing to say that can't keep on going right now, right? So.
Right. Except that you probably shouldn't depend upon just waiting for the students to come up with that themselves. I mean, being able to.
Yeah. No, nowadays, you know, next time I teach that class, I will mention this to them, and I'll actually try to organize some people to maintain, you know, a note-taking facility.
Sure.
I'm hoping to try and build that into some of the classes. Some tutorial sessions I've got, they're very non-interactive and all that. So, you know, text chat I think will be enough. Other ones I'm almost planning on making it like a group call, whereas typically I would actually be helping them through specific problems. So I'm actually just going to say, okay, group chat, come in, you know, we'll just do audio only or something like that. And we can conference that way. And certainly that's a lot less informal and a lot more used to what the students are interacting.
Is archiving this kind of student-to-student interaction or students answering student questions very important to you? And if so, how do you do it? And how do you maintain that, say, from class semester to semester, if there's good knowledge that's serviced?
Yeah. I mean, again, we may be sort of in a different situation from the group, but we've got a lot of functions within our Moodle server, our Moodle site, which let us do this. We've got a thing called Dialogue, which we use a lot, which is a kind of an asynchronous way that students can interact with the teacher in particular ways. And we've got lots and lots of different ways of interacting in groups there as well. So, you know, maybe the whatever course management system you're using may very well have features that let you do this. I don't know. It's in Europe, Moodle is kind of like the default system for universities. There are universities which use other systems, but nearly everybody uses Moodle. You know, nearly every university is familiar with Mural. You know, and we've tended to, our IT section have become, have sort of built all kinds of useful functions into our Moodle server, which, you know, things like automatic registration of students and that kind of thing. And that helps us out a lot.
And
this is Nina, by the way. Just in case. Get off.
I also had a question for the participant from Cisco. Cisco has tools that I don't use, I'm afraid, sorry. Can you tell us how they're more wonderful than Zoom or other systems that you know about? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, they're essentially the same, unless you're using it for your company, because WebEx integrates with a chat pretty easily. It has its own chat and its own, it's called WebEx Teams. So you can do a lot more collaboration right from one interface. So I can pick, do I want to call you by phone or video or whatever? And you can share right from the chat. Whereas Zoom, it's just a little different. You just have to get used to it. It's just a different tool. I've used both. They both work great.
Right. And one other thing I wanted to say, PZ, if I may call you that, when I've been reading your blog, I was really impressed by the fact that you talked about being able to fall back upon the least, well, what seems like the least sophisticated way of teaching the class, which is that you base it upon the textbook. You have a list in your head of, here's the concepts I want the students to be able to come out with. Here's how to explain this. Here's how to do this without having them to have hatch fruit flies in their bedrooms, and or kitchens are better, I guess, and so on. And you know, there's a long list of things when you think about that would be great for next quarter, next semester, next whatever.
Yes.
But in terms of, you know, over the next few weeks, you know, then thinking about great video conferencing features that we might like to have is a non-starter.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the common denominator I was able to figure out, is that, you know, we've got all these technologies which are going to be variable in their ability for the students to use them. We're also struggling because at least I am uncomfortable with many of these, and I'm learning them myself, but we can always fall back on the textbooks. So that would be, you know, I'm kind of thinking a combination of, I will have occasional Zoom conferences where, you know, optional Zoom conferences where they can talk. I will have some short videos that they can view, but mainly what I see is my role is, here, I'm going to guide you through the textbook. Here's the sections you have to read. Here's a narrative to tie them all together, because the textbooks are all just big reference books essentially, and just, you know, spell out, here's the concept I want you to get. Go read chapter 4, section 3, and chapter 5, section 8, and we can put these together and make a story out of them.
I mean, one of the last classes I taught, this was a while ago, was an undergraduate class on where one of the final assignments was to build a compiler, what's called a compiler in computer science, which is a fair-sized task, although we give building blocks to do that with. And that would be neat if you could do that online. But as I mentioned, you couldn't do that online. Then we would still want to have here's what the students ought to have learned from that, and let's go over that material in maybe a lot of different ways just to make sure they get that, and then provide them with the experience to do that. If they could do that online with the right virtual machines, whatever, could be a great thing. And if not, then we're just going to have to lecture at them a whole lot.
Yeah. So this is our textbook for. Oh, it vanished. There's a problem with this thing. Anyway, this is our massive textbook, which is blinking in and out of existence. But the problem is it's huge and it's got a lot of material in there, and students come to me tearing their hair out because they don't know what they are supposed to know. And this is kind of an indigestible lump without, it makes me useful that I can actually say, here's what's important, here's why it's important, here's the bare bones of what you need to understand, here's the problems you should solve at the end of the chapter, that I play the role of the guide to the complicated textbook. And clearly that I'm going to be doing more of that for the rest of the semester.
PC and others, I don't know if you are familiar with reading apprenticeship, which is a kind of a name for a research-based movement about teaching students how to read. Many of our students, they may be taught to read as in they could sound out words and make them out, but they're not taught like how to actually extract information from their textbooks. And since I've started incorporating some of the reading apprenticeship ideas into my classes, I see real differences. It's a bit of a, I have found it a steep learning curve, particularly in science, because a lot of what you do is kind of talk about your own, it's a lot of metacognition. So you talk a lot about what you think as you read and what your experience is around reading. And it can be hard. And I feel like in a science classroom where you feel pressure to get through a certain amount of content to do that. But in a teaching environment where you can do some of it asynchronously, it actually kind of works. So I've been using discussion boards and other stuff to use some of that. I'll put a link in the chat to WestEd's materials on it.
Yeah, well, we've seen this many times in our classrooms that, you've, for instance, hand them a paper from the scientific literature, and the first time you do this, students have no idea how to read it. They are totally baffled by all this stuff. And, then some smarty pants like me comes along and says, well, that's an easy paper. I finished that in 5 minutes, because you know what to look for, and they don't. And so even the simplest paper is a struggle of hours to interpret. And so that's another thing is, especially in our upper level courses, we try to introduce more of that so that they get comfortable with how the readings work. Okay, we've been going on for an hour and a quarter.
Oh, okay.
And I'm pretty sure that I bugged out YouTube.
You crashed YouTube, no.
Well, no, I think it's people are complaining that they were only hearing my voice, and there's funny stuff going on. I got to work this out. So maybe this would be a good place for us all to stop, and I will try to have conversations like this in the future as well. And y'all happy to join. You got my magic room number now, so you can crash everything that I do. It's going to be great.
Ooh.
Nice.
You can always remove us and block us permanently.
Yeah, we can come watch your lectures. That would be cool, actually.
Yeah,
okay.
it would.
Before we go, I'd just like to tell a funny story about coronavirus, which is not all that funny. But I was trying to tell a story a while ago when I was muted accidentally, so I was acting it all out. But I'm recently retired. I'm 66 years old. I'm living in what's more or less a retirement community by the California coast. It's not quite, but there's an awful lot of retired people walking around, and some with walkers, some with canes, some just walking. And my wife is not as old as me. We have I'm doing video games. So what I'm thinking of volunteering him to go carry groceries around the neighborhood or something, just to since he's he's relatively low risk at catching things. And I've recently been planning to visit Seattle in next month in about 4 weeks to attend a film festival. And by the way, so Seattle is a hot spot. Film festivals are not a good place to go. It's going by airplane. And by the way, I should mention that I'm also high risk at a few things, some of which I always think that my disabilities are invisible, and people tell me, no, they're not, John. But I'm diabetic. I have all these other whatever things, and fortunately, they canceled the film festival, thank goodness. But I should also mention that my wife's 87-year-old mother is currently visiting us here. She was going to fly home to New England next week. She's not going to do that anymore. So she gets to visit for a while, whatever. So there's all kinds of great non-academic problems going on too. So I guess my story wasn't that funny, but it's just this perfect storm of things.
Well, I think it illustrates the breadth of the problems we're facing, all the adjustments we have to make right now.
Right. Yep. At least we were able to buy lots of meat at the store, so we're having guests over.
We're vegetarian. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, and to some extent, we've always been experimenting with, new ways of teaching, new ways of exploring content. Hey, let's, whip up a Google form. Let's try and use this online surface, and see if it works any better like that. This is another challenge essentially along those lines, where now we have to deal with, we're blocked with a tool that we normally use to teach students, and now we've got to come up with an alternative. So it's actually not much different than what we've had before.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that many years ago that we started using PowerPoint, which freaked some people out. And we've got some faculty who are horrified at the transition from traditional blackboards to whiteboards. So yeah, we've been changing a lot.
Well, it isn't too long ago when handouts would have been an unheard of thing. Yeah, think back.
One of my reactions when reading about all this and thinking, about putting classes online was that, gee, that means exams will have no proctors. That'll be convenient for people who like to cheat. But then there's also tools that are a few decades old that are good for dealing with that. So, we keep doing our best.
Yeah, I'm not worried about exams because I usually do take-home exams, especially at the end of the semester, and it's really easy when you're talking about esoteric things like exotic biology to come up with questions that are nowhere on the internet. So.
Yeah, and where I'm coming from as well, we're starting to get into auto graders and using things online to actually do our grading for us. It's a lot tougher to sort of cheat around those. Obviously, you've got to go through plagiarism checks and all that, but still, it basically narrows the problem, makes it a lot easier to get around those issues.
And we'll have all and to some extent we'll have all new problems too. So we'll get to see what happens when it happens.
Okay, so before this turns into a Minnesota goodbye, does anyone have any last thoughts they want to express before we shut down?
Let me just finish off by saying, in that case, then, that if anybody wants to get in touch and find out what we do, what we've been doing here in Sweden, just I think I put my email address.
Yep, I got it here.
Yeah, just mail me, and I'll be happy to hear what you're doing and tell you what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm amazed by the ubiquity of the European platform. So that's a good thing to learn from.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, what should we use? I don't know. Zoom is good. Yeah, let's use Zoom. Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we've just actually made the transition from, or a couple of years ago, from using Adobe Connect, and when we were working with Adobe Connect, SUNET, there's a Swedish university network, was Adobe's largest single customer in the world for using Connect. Because Sweden tends to act collectively, and fix collective solutions. That's just the way that that we work.
Okay, well then on that note, let us adjourn,
Hmm?
and
Okay.
we should keep in touch as we
Thank
work
you.
out things.
Good
Oh,
luck.
thank you. This has been very instructive for me,
Yeah.
even if I did screw up YouTube.
We learn best from our failures, don't we?
That's right. Yes,
I do.
I'm really good at the failure part.
I'm sure
Did
Google will
you?
send you a bill.
My own failures are the very best.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay, so we'll talk to you all
Thank
later. I'm
you. Take
ending the
care.
meeting.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.